We're going to look at how we take something that's in rational exponent form and rewrite it in radical form. Remember, rational is just a fancy name for fraction, and so what we're looking at here are exponents that are in fraction form. So if I were to have something written in rational exponent form, it's going to have three parts. We're going to have the base of the exponent, we'll call that a, and then it's going to be raised to the m over n power. Now, n could not be 0 because remember we can't divide by 0. We can't have that in the denominator of a fraction. But m could be anything. And so what those three parts represent are the base, the index, and the exponent when we move things into radical form. When it goes into radical form, the base is now going to be called the radicand, and I'll show you that in just a second. So in this exponent, the base is a. The index is the denominator of the fraction. And so the index is going to be m, and then the exponent is always the numerator of the fraction, so it's going to be m. Now here's how this goes when we rewrite it into radical form. We're going to start with our radical, and the base is a, so we're going to put that underneath the radical. Now, the vocabulary changes a little bit when we switch to here because this is now called the radicand. The radicand is the number that's underneath your radical. The index tells us what type of root we're supposed to be doing, so that's going to go right here. And then the exponent means that we're going to then take this and raise it to the m power. And that's what that's going to look like when we switch it into that form. So let's look at a couple of examples. If we have an example like 8 to the 2/3 power, let's kind of break these pieces down. So again, the base of the exponent is going to become our radicand. So the base here is 8. The index is the denominator, so that's going to be 3. And the exponent is the numerator, so it's going to be 2. When we put these all into their respective places in radical form, the radicand is going to be the base, so that's 8. The index is 3, so that's going to go here. And then since there's a power of 2, we're going to raise all of this to the second power. If I throw in a variable, it becomes no different. Let's say I have x to the 9/2 power. The base here is x. The index is the denominator, that's 2. And the exponent is going to be the numerator, so this one is going to be 9. In radical form, now here's something that's a little bit different that we have to kind of pay attention to. If the index is 2, that means we're doing a square root, and we've seen square roots before. They don't usually have a little 2 written up in the corner. That's because if it's not explicitly written as a different index, we're always going to assume that the index is 2. So we're also not going to write it when we convert it. So our radical would have a radicand of x. The 2 we're going to leave blank because it's the square root, and then the exponent would be 9. So that's something you want to watch for. That's why we left that blank. Square roots are always implied. So we won't ever write that 2 there. Sort of how with logarithms, if we just write log, that's implied that it's a base 10. So we're not going to write that down. Now, one thing that we want to watch for also is that we could possibly go the other direction. So let's say that instead I had something like the 4th root of n. Notice that there's not a power there, so we can assume then that it's to the first power since we didn't add anything there on the outside. So the base is the radicand, so the base here would be n. The index is 4, and the exponent in this case, since we don't have one, is going to be 1. Now remember, the index tells us our denominator, and the exponent tells us our numerator. So when we go to write this in rational exponent form, we're going to start with our base, that's n. the denominator is going to be 4, and then the exponent is going to be 1. So that would be n to the 1/4 power. So I hope you are well versed now in rewriting.